Hello everyone, and welcome to Majoring in the Minors, a weekly series where we cover the events surrounding the North American Academy scene. Over the course of the last few weeks, a resurging threat has been facing North American Academy, which would be Cloud9. Despite looking hopeless in the first week of Academy, Cloud9 has slowly been ramping up into a fearsome threat. This weekend, they shattered TSM, and while they fell to 100 Thieves, that game wasn't entirely convincing. So how did Cloud9 turn around their season? Well, the explanation is clear by observation alone. It's off the back of their solo laners, each of which are in contention for best in their position, and only likely second at worst. Top laner Fudge is very young, both in his actual age, where he just hit 18 a few months ago, and in his career length. He began playing competitively in 2018, and only hit a Premier League in June of 2019, where he joined Australian team Mammoth. Fudge's tournament performances have been remarkable each time. In his debut split, he split time with top laner Tapoon, who is one of the most accomplished players in the O scene. In fact, this whole roster may look familiar to you. Fudge, Triple, King, Destiny, there's a lot of names here that went international following the end of the split. Fudge was tasked with being the other side of Tapoon's coin. Tapoon specialized in ranged top laners, Gnar, Nico, Karma, and even a quirky top game. Meanwhile, Fudge was extremely skilled on Aatrox, Camille, and Irelia. Between Fudge and Tapoon, it's not easy to tell who was better. While Tapoon had the better statistics, he was primarily placed on champions that made farming these statistics easy, like Gnar. Meanwhile, Fudge was tasked with harder to execute melee split pushers, likely because Tapoon's native language not being English could be a hindrance in communication when pursuing a style like this. In any case, the young top laner was seriously impressive, and in 2020, Cloud9 signed him after the altering of the import rules in Academy. In spring regular season, Fudge was impressive, but not extremely remarkable. But the reason why I say this is obvious. He literally spent almost half of his games on Ornn, and while he's a good Ornn player, he's playing Ornn. Whenever he did get his hands on his Camille or Aatrox, he looked brilliant. While not each draft is safe for Academy, it's apparent that Fudge used his Camille to specifically counterpick Aatrox, which is sensible considering that Camille wasn't an especially common top laner in spring. Cloud9's drafts regarding top lane were very formulaic. On blue side, they would blind the priority Ornn or Set, and on red side, if neither were available, they'd use their counterpick on Camille into Aatrox, or they would blind pick the Aatrox themselves, but this wasn't especially common. Generally, Fudge would blind a priority top laner, and he performed admirably despite being in a matchup that wasn't his choosing. Fudge held the second highest KDA out of all starting top laners, with the absolute lowest gold share. While Fudge's jungle proximity wasn't extremely low relative to the other top laners, Inori was definitely a jungler much more focused on the middle and bottom side. But for Fudge, that's fine. He didn't really need a jungler to camp him. He didn't really need a counterpick. In fact, he didn't really need gold either. Fudge only held a gold share of 20.6. Fudge just needed a lane to push and apply pressure. Cloud9 was a serious threat in the fact that they could win from all three lanes. Fudge could carry on a split pusher and win through side lane. Palafox was capable of carrying through picks off of his Syndra, Zoe, or LeBlanc, and King was a gold vacuum and more than capable of carrying through teamfights. Cloud9 rode a 12-game win streak into playoffs and only dropped one game in the postseason. Playoffs was nothing different for Fudge. Set, Aatrox, Ornn, and one Sylas game. Fudge would blind pick in 5 of these 7 games, and he would still crush the competition. His skill on Sylas in particular allowed Cloud9 to leave Ornn open and perform draft maneuvers that were off limits to the other teams. This summer is nothing new for Fudge. Top lane is his kingdom. Despite Inori primarily playing to the bottom side in the early game, as indicated by Cloud9's 90% first dragon percentage, Fudge still has the highest KDA out of all top laners and is tied for 3rd in CS Delta at 15. While Fudge's gold share has exploded due to the lower allocation to their AD carry Tomo, it's apparent that he's making great use of these mid-game resources. I'd say the only top laner who can contest him for his top spot is Zion Spartan. However, Fudge is superior in how he handles the early game jungle aggression, and Golden Guardians is one of the most top-focused teams in Academy. Overall, Fudge has his finger to the pulse of the meta. His champion pool permits him unique counterpicks that fit into a variety of compositions. Additionally, Fudge isn't all about his picks. He's just as capable of locking an Ornn or Set and being a stable threat throughout the game. Fudge doesn't need gold, but he's just as capable of carrying if he's granted a high gold share. This versatility is very rare for a young player, who are usually only capable of emulating their solo queue style in competitive. Regardless of who you think the overall best top laner in Academy is, Fudge is definitely the most ready player for LCS. His swapping of styles lends him a flexibility that his competition, such as Zion Spartan, simply lacks. While Fudge was a prodigy the second he stepped onto the scene, Palafox was a gem that needed polishing. His debut in the 2017 Scouting Grounds featured one of the most stacked Scouting Ground rosters of all time: Blabber, Palafox, Prismal, and Vulcan. Palafox's initial Academy roster seemed promising, but exploded after Week 6. Optic Academy's explosion was due to the cessation of scrims following the promotion of Dokla, multiple visa issues causing the team to be split up across North America, and motivation issues from some members, of which Palafox wasn't immune from himself. In any case, Palafox was noted for his potential throughout his early career, despite being ELO held on some rosters. Palafox was one of the only good spots on what, in my mind, is one of the most cursed Academy rosters of all time. It was the second split with Golden Guardians where Palafox began to come into his own, and Golden Guardians would seize their first, and so far only, appearance in Academy playoffs and finish second, just behind the 100 Thieves Academy roster, which featured Someday in the top lane. A big component of Golden Guardian's success was Palafox himself. His Silas was at the top of the league, he had a perfect KDA and Karma, and he was a very efficient scaler on Corki. He was also capable of playing the Akali and Aurelia too, offering a degree of flexibility in Golden Guardians' identity as a team. Palafox wasn't quite as good as Yasui or Golden Glue yet, but his potential was unquestionable. His high KDA and solid CS per minute marked him as a steady carry for Golden Guardians, and his Karma was a fascinating accommodation to compositions Golden Guardians would draft in order to facilitate Zion Spartan to carry them. In 2020 spring, Palafox only improved. While Demonte single-handedly smurfed on each team early in the split, Palafox was capable of ramping up, while the Dignitas roster stood stagnant. Palafox was tied for second in unique champion picks among mid laners, and many of them fulfilled different niches and compositions as opposed to just being Ditto mages. Palafox held the highest KDA of all mid laners, and while his kill participation percentage and CS per minute were middling, he did hold the highest gold per minute on average due to the pressure he was capable of outputting in lane. Not only was he capable of working well with Inori to help spread jungle pressure throughout the map in the early game, he was just as capable of punishing the enemy tower anytime the enemy roamed. While Palafox wasn't a premier carry in spring, mostly due to the fact that his AD carry and top lane were top of the league already, this summer has certainly been a change of pace for the young mid laner. In my first episode, I stated an observation about Cloud9 by saying that Toma was not yet ready to take the role of a primary carry, and Palafox was unable to play enchanters mid like Karma and Lulu. Well, I was right. After Palafox began playing more conventional mid laners, Cloud9 followed a 6-game win streak, which was only snapped last weekend. I won't talk about the match against 100 Thieves and how 100 Thieves held the stylistic edge, but Palafox and Fudge still performed admirably in spite of their team's poor performance. So far in 2020 summer, Palafox places second in KDA of all starting mid laners, third kill participation percentage, and is middling in his CS per minute and gold share. Inori has been a boon for Palafox, as Cloud9's mid-jungle synergy is on point, but Palafox's bottom lane is one of the weaker ones in the league, hands down. Diamond has not been playing to his usual performances, and honestly, while I don't want to throw him under the bus, it's not just ADCs that have a hard time playing with mages. Mage ADCs have the serious potential of causing issues in the support role, as support players are undoubtedly less experienced laning with mages as opposed to a conventional marksman. Tomo needs more time, and while he's getting better, he's still not close to the level King was at. I know it's an overused term, but Palafox utilizes these agency picks like Zoe and Syndra in ways that a lot of other North American mid laners don't. Palafox plays for priority. This is an observation that comes both from myself and from Palafox's former teammates. Palafox will actively seek to gain priority and use his timer to create an advantage somewhere on the map, whether that be rotating to a skirmish Inori wants to start, supporting him while he's invading, or just controlling vision. In contrast, mid laners like Evolved are much more focused on their own lane, and will typically set up freezes in order to deny CS and create a favorable wave state. Palafox plays to his jungler, Evolved will have his jungler play around him. I spoke briefly in the Immortals episode how Alorium's playstyle in Spring was somewhat reminiscent of Horizon Prime League, and I can see a resemblance between Palafox and Special during his tenure in BTXL. I know Special is a bit of a meme in LEC, and I think Palafox is an overall better player, but Special was definitely the type of player who played to his jungler, and would thrive on these agency picks like Syndra in order to play for priority and use his timer to create an advantage on the map. Palafox is a player that has talent that isn't quantifiable in something like statistics. His KDA is good, but it doesn't describe the fact that he plays differently relative to the other North American mid laners. There are a few others in Academy that play this kind of style, but none are as successful as Palafox in his execution of the style. Overall, Palafox is a great player to have if you're a control-style jungler with carry side lanes, but he's prone to struggling on teams without significant firepower elsewhere in the map. Thankfully for him, Palafox is a stable carry on the top side with Fudge, and Inori is a solid upper tier academy jungler who makes good use of the priority he plays for. Also, while Tomo isn't at the level of upper tier AD carries in Academy, I think Palafox is a great mid laner to have in order to nurture a new player like him. While I think there's merit to the Spartan approach of development and just letting Tomo get dove 5 times a game, a mid laner like Palafox who maintains pressure over the enemy mid laner can help reduce the pressure felt by other lanes. I don't intend to discount the performance from Diamond allowing Tomo to accrue some pretty solid lane statistics, but I definitely think that Palafox's mid lane pressure has shielded Tomo from mid lane roams and extensive enemy jungle pressure. In conclusion, Palafox and Fudge have similar playstyles, but fill very different roles in the team. Both are lane dominant players who are capable of winning lane without much assistance elsewhere, but Palafox specifically is more intensive on draft resources, but to be honest, most mid laners are anyway. Fudge's versatility between playing both weak side and strong side offers Cloud9 a playstyle that's variable and difficult to plan against. Palafox, on the other hand, is a great enabler in the mid lane, and draws attention away from his side laners by creating a lot of pressure on his lane opponent. While other mid laners may opt into a favorable but scaling matchup with counterpick, Palafox is a mid laner that will play for lane and make the enemy mid laner know that he has the advantage. Both of these playstyles fit together nicely, as with a conventional mid laner, Fudge may face jungle pressure that would hinder his split push in the mid to late game. Meanwhile, without a strong carry top laner, Palafox would have little to rely on and carry threat elsewhere on the team, and the pressure he creates would be next to useless. That's all for this week. I'd like to thank my graphics designer KingMe for helping me with the thumbnail and graphics for this video. I'd like to thank Goferino for helping me with the presentation of data in this video. Links to both of their Twitters are in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.